is Jordan. I am delighted to be here with Stephen Donziger. Stephen has been under house arrest here in his home in New York City for over 2 years at this point. I've interviewed Stephen before. We've covered support rallies for Stephen, and it's a very, very long, convoluted story, but it's also, in a way, a bit of a simple story if you really read into it. So, before we get into what's coming, because Stephen has been, in my view, very wrongly convicted of a misdemeanor charge that in New York history has been no longer than 90 days. 90 days, I think, under house arrest? Or,
yeah, house arrest.
90 days under house arrest. I just wanted to, I've seen a lot of interviews you've done, but I've never asked you kind of the beginning stages of what got you involved with fighting on behalf of these Ecuadorians who were poisoned basically by Chevron.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I got involved as a young lawyer in 1993. I was invited to go in a delegation with other lawyers and some scientists to investigate what we had heard was a terrible environmental catastrophe in Ecuador's Amazon, in an area where Texaco had drilled. We went down there and witnessed what looked like an apocalyptic nightmare. I mean, there were lakes of oil on the floor of the jungle. There were hundreds and hundreds of waste pits that Texaco would gouge out of the jungle floor. They had run pipes from the waste pits to the rivers and streams that local people were using for their drinking water, their bathing, and their fishing. So began what's become a 28-year journey that led to a hugely successful judgment against Chevron, which had bought Texaco, in Ecuador's courts, where they wanted the trial to be held, where they had accepted jurisdiction. And then that led to them retaliating against me because they didn't want to pay the people of Ecuador. They sued me here in New York for fraud for $60 billion, the largest amount that anyone has ever been sued for in the United States. And I live in a 2-bedroom apartment where we're standing right now. Ultimately, the judgment against them was affirmed by 28 appellate judges, 6 appellate courts, including the Supreme Courts of Ecuador and Canada. But they persisted in going after me here before what I believe is a dishonest U.S. federal judge, Louis Kaplan, who denied me a jury and let Chevron present false witness testimony from a guy they paid $2 million to, and he claimed that he was in a meeting where I offered a bribe. There was no evidence I ever offered a bribe. It's not true.
I wanted to drill in on that.
Yeah.
Like, they used racketeering charges,
Yes.
which is kind of like RICO.
Mm-hmm.
They go after, think about The Sopranos.
It's a law designed to target the mafia.
And it's not like you have to show a lot of evidence in general for racketeering, RICO, those kind of cases.
You have to show conspiracy
Right.
with various predicate offenses, and what they did is they tried to paint the team of people that had worked to hold Chevron accountable as lawyers and scientists and advocates as some sort of racketeering conspiracy similar to the mafia.
Mm-hmm.
With the idea that the entire lawsuit, the purpose of it was to extort money from Chevron. I mean, can you imagine? Like, it's incontrovertible that Chevron dumped literally 16 billion gallons of cancer-causing oil waste into Ecuador. I mean, they admit it. It was confirmed by multiple courts in Ecuador, and they try to play the role of victim so they don't have to pay the people of Ecuador. They went after the team, and they claimed that I was the head of the team, therefore I was the mastermind of what they called a conspiracy. No one was ever charged with a crime. It was just all a civil lawsuit they filed against me.
And the only really evidence they had was this Ecuadorian judge that they paid for him and his family to move here. They rehearsed with him 53 times.
53 days.
53 days they rehearsed with him.
Yeah, and he came in and testified falsely. He later admitted he lied repeatedly on the stand, but Judge Kaplan, who's a former tobacco industry lawyer, without a jury, claimed that I committed all sorts of felonies in a civil case. So it was a tricked up process by Chevron. They basically got a judge in a civil case to find that I committed criminal offenses, and in doing it, they denied me a jury. They denied me my due process rights, and now they have this judgment, which is kind of crazy, and they go around the world saying, oh, a judge found that he, committed bribery and extortion. In the meantime, 28 other appellate judges in Ecuador and Canada have affirmed the validity of the Ecuador judgment that I fought many years to help my clients obtain. So you really have one U.S. trial judge, who's a former tobacco lawyer, against 28 appellate judges in Ecuador and Canada, who have sided with our team to reject this ridiculous false witness testimony from a man named Alberto Guerra, who's an Ecuadorian man to whom Chevron has paid millions of dollars. They moved him up here, coached him for the 53 days, as you said, and he went into court and told a big lie about me. Based on that, Kaplan ruled against us and claimed that we could not enforce the Ecuador judgment in the United States. But that still doesn't end Chevron's risk, because Chevron has assets in dozens and dozens of countries around the world. And the Ecuadorians have other lawyers who are helping them pursue those assets in order to force Chevron to comply with the rule of law and comply with the Ecuador judgment.
And, I mean, just from a basic nobody's understanding of the law, I thought that when a witness recants or their story changes, at least you see in the movies and things like that, in many cases could set innocent people free who were already in prison. But this witness said he lied, but somehow this has continued going in motion.
You know, I believe Judge Kaplan knew he was lying, and it was obvious when he was on the stand. Why would you coach someone for 53 days, pay him millions of dollars? There's no corroborating evidence to his story. So, you know, when a year later, he was under oath in another case, he admitted he lied before Judge Kaplan. First of all, Judge Kaplan never should have allowed this case to proceed. I mean, the case was in Ecuador, for starters.
And a U.S. federal judge.
He's a U.S. federal judge.
A U.S. federal prosecutor refused
to prosecute me.
Right.
So Kaplan basically let Chevron prosecute me. And really, the bigger issue is really, I think, the privatization by Chevron of our system of justice to target its critics. You know, they've been doing this against me for years, where Judge Kaplan lets them walk into court and prosecute me without a jury in a civil case, and later he imposed literally millions of dollars of court costs on me, forcing me to pay them money, pay Chevron money. Chevron makes $250 billion a year. I don't really have any money. I'm a human rights lawyer. But it was a way to try to bankrupt me so I couldn't work on the case. So on the theory that I owed them money, they asked Judge Kaplan to force me to give them my computer and cell phone, and that would violate attorney-client privilege and all sorts of privileges and legally protected confidences. And I told Judge Kaplan I couldn't do that. I wanted to appeal that order, which I did appeal it. While it was on appeal, that is, while I was appealing the lawfulness of clearly a legal order from Judge Kaplan, he charged me with criminal contempt of court for not complying with his illegal order while it was under appeal, and had me locked up.
Well, speaking of illegal, or just completely unusual, I want to drill into the fact that a federal prosecutor declined to prosecute you.
That's right.
And then in a very unusual step, which I've never heard of, Judge Kaplan outsourced to a private prosecutor to prosecute you.
Yes.
Basically on behalf of...
In theory, on behalf of the government.
Right, and there were ties between these private prosecutors and Chevron.
That's exactly right. So basically what happened is, you know, judges have the right to appoint a private prosecutor under very rare circumstances only. And in this case, Judge Kaplan took his charges to the regular prosecutor who refused to prosecute me, because I believe the prosecutor found the charges to be baseless. At that point, Kaplan should have dropped it. Instead, he appoints a private law firm called Seward & Kissel to prosecute me, and lets them be paid out of a court fund, basically a taxpayer-funded court fund, their hourly fees, which have now totaled $1 million for a misdemeanor case. He later discloses 7 months into it that they had Chevron as a client. So I'm being prosecuted by a Chevron law firm. The judge overseeing this contempt case is over my computer. Is Loretta Preska, who's a leader of the Federalist Society, which is a Chevron-funded, you know, pro-business legal organization. So I'm being prosecuted by a Chevron lawyer. There's a Chevron-linked judge overseeing the case who denied me a jury. The main witnesses against me are Chevron lawyers. And it's a complete, in our opinion, it's a charade of a trial. It was. Judge Preska, who had already locked me up as a supposed flight risk on a misdemeanor, even though I have a wife and son, I never missed a court date, never had a single bar grievance complaint filed against me. She locked me up saying I would flee to Ecuador, which is preposterous. And I've been here for 2 years and 2 months. I mean, it's extraordinary. The longest sentence ever given a lawyer convicted of my level of offense in New York is 90 days of home confinement. Nobody's ever even been sent to jail for a day. And on October 1st, she's going to sentence me, and I believe she could plan to put me in jail. I hope she doesn't. We're going to go in there and ask her to release me on the theory that I've already served my time and then some. But she could put me in jail for up to 6 months.
And I don't want to wish this, but some legal experts I read said if you're sent to jail, even after that, they could put you on probation after the imprisonment, which could potentially come with further house arrest. Is that possible?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I hope not.
Right. Because it seems like they've done a lot of unusual,
I hope not.
extra legal things.
I mean, whatever it is, they can only give me 6 months more time, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Jail or house or home confinement. I'm hoping she'll just let me go or let me come home.
Right.
You know, I don't want to go to jail. I want to continue with my human rights work, and I have a fabulous appeal. And I think the right thing to do at this point, given what's happened up to now, is to free me, and let's let the appeal play out. Because I believe I will be fully exonerated.